Hi, this is Father Jorge Obregon, and today I want to talk to you about the concerns that I'm feeling and I'm seeing that a lot of people have in our country as men, and things that we can do to go forward. But first I want to tell you about my time serving in Venezuela. I didn't ask for it, but I was sent to Venezuela some years ago, precisely as the communist regime of Chavez was changing to the communist regime of Maduro. And I didn't know, dear friends, what it was to suffer before I stepped into that country. Maybe a breakup when I was in high school, but I really and truly didn't know what suffering meant for a human being. Those days there, with everybody worried, seeing parents getting their kids kidnapped, waiting 3 hours to tank up my car, and loads of examples that I could give you of how you suffer when you're in a country like that, when you are suffering under a regime like that. And as I was there, I recall so clearly how many times I'd go to the chapel and I'd ask the Lord, could you just give me 1 week living in the United States? Why do we have to suffer this? Is this a punishment for the Venezuelan people? Are Americans getting rewarded just because they were born in the United States of America? And I would ask myself, what did they do? And what did these people do? And what did I do to deserve all of that? Yes, I know I was being weak, but it was a question that was legitimate to ask. And little by little in prayer, I almost felt like this answer coming to my heart, to my mind from the Lord. Every human has to fight the battle that they were given. Dear friends, in our country, in our society, I basically see 3 big concerns in the hearts and minds of people. One is that the moral fabric of America is falling to pieces, that it's deteriorating fastly. The second is that many of our kids, many of our young people, many of our children, for crying out loud, are leaving the faith. We hear that all over the place. And third, we are becoming more and more polarized. It's as if there were just 2 sides to the world, and we're applying political visions to our faith. I want to bring to our attention something that happened in Europe before your eyes and my eyes and anybody that has been attentive. Very good people, many ancestors of ours in America or friends of them or relatives have seen this. They suffered the consequences. Countries like Italy, Ireland, France, Spain, all of these traditionally very Catholic countries that sent missionaries out to the whole world for centuries. And what is going on there? It is such a sad scene to see. And many people in their later stages of their life right now have suffered the sadness of this. Church attendance and Catholic values are nowhere to be seen in society today. Europe is no longer a Christian continent. If we're going to put up a fight in our own land, we have to be knowledgeable about what God is doing here. Let me talk to you about 4 currents of thought that have invaded our world and are now the main reasons for our moral and social decline. Number 1, sexual and feminist revolutions. Just a lack of clarity of what a true woman is, or what a man is, what sexuality is. This teaching that John Paul gave us about theology of the body and how our bodies call out that there's a God and that there's another life. The capacity to see and put a woman in the right place, know the beauty that she has, and that she does not have to compare herself to man or try to match a man's disciplines and job descriptions and hobbies. Number 2, materialism. This thought that the more we have, the happier we will be. And look, we all deny it as Catholics, but then we go out and we're always trying to think of what else we're going to buy, what we're going to acquire, and we create these new idols. Number 3, relativism, perspectivism, if you want to call it. What is that? Well, it's the thought that everybody has their own truth. And the truth just depends on the angle of which you're looking at. Relativism would be a sort of, you've got my truth, you've got your truth, I've got my truth. And let's just live in peace. Just, don't bother from here. I've got my personal space. It's the negation of universal truth. And number 4, with all the different shades of this, it's individualism. This capacity we have to just create a bubble around us where nobody can give us advice, nobody can tell us how to live, where I don't need to be humble and go to tell a priest my sins, or I can actually tell my spouse or my colleagues at work that, hey, I don't have it all together, and I'm very, very open to your feedback because I really think I need it. These 4 cancers and currents of thought are destroying the moral fabric of our country, America. I want to take a time to bring up reflections that I think matter very much. We're a country that has for many years been a beacon of light to the world. We have been told since childhood that we are a city on a hill. And we are also a country that knows how to solve things. Now, are all of these things good? Yes, they are. Of course they are. But they can have a negative effect as well. What am I referring to? Friends, we have for many, many centuries now, many decades, let's say, we have mistakenly applied the city on a hill from the book of Isaiah to America. We must remember that this city on a hill was intended for Israel, which is the Catholic Church. Another reality is that we, as a society, we're not very good at grappling with imperfection. The fact is, we are the country that solves things, right? But we also have to realize that life is imperfect. And we have to start learning that we must be okay with imperfection. There's also a tendency to fix things through science or money or law. Again, these things are good, science, money, and law. But these things that are good in and of themselves, they do not solve everything. And that's a reality we have to grapple with. Here's a quote that I love from the author of the book's Meditations on the Faith. The priest is Tadeusz Daxer, and he says the following: "The events related to the lives of the saints show us that many times God frustrated their plans so that they could fuse with His. Saints differentiate themselves from heretics in the fact that they want to convert others and not themselves, while the saints know that a better world comes only when they transform themselves." I know some of you feel very, very guilty at this stage of the game, depending on the age of your kids. You sent them maybe to a Catholic school, or at least you taught them everything they needed. Maybe you sent them to CCD, you did with your wife all that you could have done to give them a good Catholic upbringing. And they've left the faith. And you ask yourself, what have I done? What did I do wrong? And the answer, you didn't do anything wrong. What is happening right now in life, what is happening now in society is a lot bigger than just errors in parenting. This is a tidal wave that we need to fight together because it is really huge. It's the progressive secularization of society at large, not only in the United States, but also in the United States. At the end of World War II, 3 very Catholic men came together to try to create a new beginning. De Gasperi from Italy, Michael Schumann from France, and Konrad Adenauer from Germany. They came together with a hope that they could withstand the battles of what Europe would then bring to their societies, which was socialism and communism in many cases. They tried hard. A lot of good values withstood the proof of time for some years. But now we know that in a certain sense, they were not able to combat this very fierce enemy. This is a process that started 500 years ago, in the 16th century, or maybe even the 15th century, with a lot of rational mistakes by philosophers who just fell into rationalism and left God only for the private sphere, as if God did not exist. So in light of all of this, what are we going to do? Here are what I believe are the keys to finding peace today in our country, despite anything and everything. The three keys are basically the theological virtues that connect life on earth with true life in heaven. And that is faith, hope, and love. When everything fails us, when even men and women of the church fail us, when everything seems to be at the edge of a precipice, after the highest waves, we are assured that Jesus comes to quiet the vast ocean of life. So let's start with faith. Don't allow, friends, sin and imperfection to overwhelm or outrage you. That's the story of the Bible. Even the lineage of our Lord is filled with people who didn't live up to the standards that they were called to. We know that in that genealogy of our Lord Jesus Christ, there are prostitutes. Another thing is, I love what former Archbishop Chaput from Philadelphia said in his book, Strangers in a Strange Land. He reminds us that there's a great Puritan influence in our country. The church is not the country club of the saints, but the house of the sinners. But this puritanical way of seeing things just gets us outraged when we see people that are weak or are forgetting to follow their conscience. And we need to live with more peace about this. Now let's turn to action number 2, the virtue of hope. You and I, no matter how hard it is and how harder it is getting, we need to create strong nuclei, many of them, spaces where Catholic friends, families, and movements come together, and like-minded people and not so like-minded people as well come together to share their faith. Like Jesus and his disciples, like Paul and the first communities. Now, while I say this, that we have to create these groups, there's a danger of just becoming the holy huddle and just, keeping the people that I know close to myself. And there's this saying before I go on to the third one, where we can do more, which is love. Something very important. Rick Warren out there in California, the Protestant pastor who has grown immensely, says the more time we spend with people that think like us, the less capacity we have to understand them. We have to open up ourselves, going from the 7% that Bishop Barron always talks about and Matthew Kelly, to creating content and having hearts for the 82% that is out there wanting us to feed them. So what is love? Well, as we think about this third one, which is love, we must live that love outwardly to the world full of confusion and sin. In one sentence, friends, it's convert your hard hearts to the mercy of Jesus. I love the way the good Catholic Arthur Brooks, and professor at Harvard, puts it when he says that we must learn to use our values as gifts and not as weapons. He says our values are sometimes not attractive because we use our values as weapons and not as gifts. Just think about this. If you and I could put a camera in time-lapse mode on the lives of people that we think that act in ways that are not correct, that are outrageous, what would Jesus think? What would we find out? What would he see? Well, he would see that these people have very few spiritual and Christian opportunities. He sees wounds. He sees limitation. He sees lack of spiritual formation. And that's why under this aspect, we have to be open to them. And I know that we have to move from judgment to curiosity. Just like Jesus did with the Samaritan woman, just like Jesus did with the adulterous woman, where he saw them and didn't judge. He went to curiosity. He did not miss out on the chance to catechize this woman. But he knew the pathway. He knew what was first, and he knew what was second. He was not in a hurry to bring all of the 10 commandments to that person because she was not ready. From different priests and many lay people, I've heard this, that we're living in a time in which we're looking at reality as if it was us versus them. They are wrong and we are right. But we must not forget that objective reality And moral truth has become harder and harder to grasp for the majority. And it's not due to their fault. It's the lack of opportunities in their lives. Now, one thing that we mentioned at the beginning, and it's your great concern, regarding your children, what would I say? Two things, dear friends, dear parents, dear dads. Form your child the best way you can. Put everything into it, but live with peace. Let them figure it out for themselves. For many years, being the son or a daughter of a Catholic dad or mom was an automatic triumph. Times have changed, and it is no longer that way. And secondly, pray hard and passionately for them. The fact that they're leaving the faith is not your fault. This is a bigger fight than just your and your spouse's mistake. So we talked about these three European men, De Gasperi, Adenauer, and Schumann. They tried their best, but Europe is not Christian anymore. Their hopes are yet to be fulfilled. What can you and I do? What will it take? Where can we look? Well, I bring up a great hero of many of us, St. Augustine, who says, pray as though it all depended on God, but work as if it all depended on you. May God bless you and me, your family and mine. May God bless all of us through faith, hope, and love. God bless you.